And we are live. Good morning, everyone who have chosen to join us this Thursday morning. And hi to everyone watching on demand at a later occasion. My name, for those of you who are joining for the first time, these kind of webinars, my name is Sebastian Lennartson, and I am the Nordic commercial trainer for Microsoft. So I, together with Alessio, am running these Get Ready webinars where we look into different aspects of the how you could increase your business and boost your customers' business together with also and Microsoft in the Nordics. So today's topic is something a bit extra because we are actually pleased to tell you that we have Harry Beyersbergen and Mark Beckers from Intel joining us here today. These two guys know all there is to know when it comes to processors for a commercial user. And they are going to tell us a bit more about exactly how good the processors actually are performing. Because if you want to be cutting edge and if you want to be able to overcome these kind of obstacles that we see in the commercial landscape, you have to be on the best possible solution for your needs. So making sure that your customers have the right type of devices powered by the right type of Intel solution is crucial to be able to overcome the kind of obstacles that we are actually facing and the kind of obstacles that we may not even know that we'll be having to face in the future. Because what we know for sure is that the landscape is shifting and it is shifting rapidly. If someone would have told me 2019 that COVID would strike and close down pretty much everything around air traffic and traveling as a whole between countries, I would have just laughed and called that person a maniac. But reality is that it happened and nobody could see it coming. So making sure that you have the type of solutions that are required to be flexible and productive from anywhere is crucial. And that also brings me into today's competition because we do have something extra in the pot for you. And as you can see, if you're not familiar with this platform previously, you do have a Q&A function. So if you want to ask something, you can feel free to just write it in the Q&A and I will answer it as soon as possible. But regarding the Q&A, we actually have a question, and the person who first answered this question will win a EM jersey with their country of choice, either Denmark or Sweden or Norway or Finland, and their own name and number on it. So the question is, what remote capabilities does Intel VPro have which makes it the best solution for business users in a modern workplace? So what kind of remote capabilities does Intel vPro have that makes it the best solution for a commercial user in the modern workplace? Be the first one to answer that question, and you will get a EM jersey with your name and number on it. So listen up closely because the answer, if you don't know it already, will be popping up later on in this presentation. But before Intel gets started, we are going to discuss exactly what we are trying to achieve. Because from a Microsoft perspective, when it comes to commercial and SMB commercial users, we have the vision to help all of the SMBs all over the world to be more productive, collaborative, and secure. And as we all know, when it comes to productive, the companies who weren't and or didn't have the remote productive capabilities in 2019 had to make a rapid shift. But productiveness doesn't stop there. We still have a long way to go towards be enabling companies to really have the best possible technology to make the most out of the modern workway, so to speak. And when I talk about modern workway, we of course talk about the fact that a lot of staff have to work from home. They can no longer come into office for IT support. They can no longer sit with their colleagues and collaborate. They therefore have to have a type of device that enables them to be productive from anywhere at any time. And that also goes into collaboration, as mentioned, because we have a huge demand for collaborative tools and making sure that we can enable each other from a distance. And the final part, security. And there, as we all know, Intel plays a huge role as well, making sure that we are secure. And the best security can, of course, be found on a modern device powered by Intel with Windows 10 Pro. Because in that ecosystem, we can ensure that you do not have to worry about not being compliant to GDPR or other data protection regulations. You can make sure that you have focus on your business instead of focusing on patching up an old system which isn't fully secure. So easing up your mind to make sure that you can focus on generating more business instead. The modern workplace, as we see it, is built on collaboration, and it's built on mobility. It's built on having the kind of AI tools that enables you to do more with your data and be more productive. And then the final aspect, which is trust. Because when we start working with AI, we also have to use some kind of analysis tool on the data that we get. But we would never risk anyone's data being exposed either to ourselves or to any third parties. So trust is a huge part of the modern workplace and our modern workplace solutions. Because as soon as we start nurturing and really enabling employees with AI, they have to apply the zero trust policy against us and think, wait, are you really secure? Is our data being treated in the right way? And are you using it in any way to analyze, to sell it to third parties? And of course, we are not. Our mission is not to make money out of selling data. Our mission is not about gaining the most possible information about customers' business. Our mission is to give them the best productivity software, enabling them with AI, letting AI help them to achieve more and nothing else. So with a modern solution, you can be mobile, but still collaborate. You have the type of AI solutions that really enables you. And without a modern processor from Intel, it would be very hard to boost all of the AI functions that you would find in a Windows 10 Pro combined with, for example, Microsoft 365 Business Standard. So having that ecosystem is crucial to be able to overcome all of the type of challenges that we are seeing. And if we ask the executives in Sweden, the challenge is basically that 77% of Swedish executives are counting on lasting change in remote work, according to Pricewaterhouse. So basically, everyone is acknowledging the fact that we will not meet every day at the office as we may have used to. We may not even travel as far as we used to. Perhaps someone was commuting to another city in the same country on a weekly basis. But those kind of patterns are disrupted, and we have to be productive on a remote. We have to meet our teams without actually seeing each other. And providing a platform for that is quite easy. All you have to do is look for the best Intel processor, and you have to look for a modern SKU with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft 365 Business Standard, which then includes Teams and OneDrive and everything alike. In that setting, you would be ready to go. But in reality, it is pretty much like this. We have a major amount of companies in Sweden that are using, and in the Nordics as well, should be mentioned, that are actually using a device which is around 4 years old. And a 4-year-old device may sound fairly new, but given how rapidly technology is changing and how rapidly, for example, Intel has been developing their efficiency in processors, a 4-year-old device is pretty different from a modern device. So making sure that we enable companies to accelerate, refresh, and get the best possible modern device to boost their needs and boost their productive and efficiency is crucial. And we are going to look into to exactly how we can do that. When it comes to commercial devices in 2021, we are really happy to say that the modern device is a lot faster than it's ever been. And I can say for myself, being on a device that is actually 3 years old, that my device is not what it's always been. I would have a better workday efficiency if I had a modern device. With the modern device, you get the kind of flexible capabilities to work easily with touch, but also, for example, with traditional trackpad. You can have a more integrated solution when it comes to connecting towards other screens. Uh, you have the type of lightness that gives it an ease when it comes to carrying it with you if you have to work from anywhere, at the airport, at the train station, or even at home. So the modern device is a lot about the format of it. It is really, really easy to bring, but it's not only about format, because once you get started and you press start, the modern device, which Intel will also be mentioning, is of course a whole other experience. When it comes to productiveness, it cannot be compared to a 4-year-old device. Even boot up time is unparalleled in comparison. So making sure that your customers see the kind of gains that they would have from a modern device is really important for you to be able to boost your business. Because the new kind of employees, the kind of employee that I actually represent, well, we do have some kind of different mindset. Traditionally, we would see a lot of employees that would stay at the same company for a longer amount of time. But what we're seeing is that the younger generations are more likely to quit due to having outdated technology on their workplace. So making sure that a workplace stays relevant and compelling and attractive by offering the best possible technology is really important if you want to attract the younger generation's interest and be a compelling employee for them. So therefore, making sure that we offer technology for the next coming generation becomes really important, and really important to also remind all of our SMBs out there when talking to them. And it may sound kind of ridiculous to say that, oh, you need to have a new computer to be able to attract the younger generation. But in reality, that's kind of where the truth lies. If we have the type of technology that attracts the younger generation, we make sure that our business gets a lot of the potential from both older and more experienced and seasoned staff, and the new, young, up and coming ones that may not be as experienced, but on the other hand, may have a lot of new ideas. Who knows? And when it goes back to old devices, I also want to mention the fact that an old device is not necessarily cheaper. It is rarely cheaper at all. Bringing this discussion back to the around 4-year-old device, they would potentially cost 1.5 times as much in repair and the total maintenance cost as a modern device would. So of course, by not buying a modern device, you avoid the upfront cost, the big payment of acquiring them. But on the other hand, you have a larger cost spread over time with maintenance and repairs. So maintenance is a big part of that. It also is a lot about having the decreased productivity cost, because as soon as I have to spend more time dealing with my computer, for example, going into the IT support to get it fixed, or sitting and trying to patch and solve something, I am not making any money. So having employees that sit and try to fix or try to solve issues with their old device means that they spend less time on creating value for the company. So we have a huge loss in productivity cost, which also costs us money in growth. Um, the security risk is the third aspect of this, because the hackers out there, they are getting better and better, and they spend a lot of time due to the fact that if they succeed, there is a lot of money in it for them. Some famous hackers, for example, one in Canada who got arrested in 2019, they actually could connect $26 million in assets to him, which he made in just 1 year as a hacker. And this man was not some kind of super advanced part of a big organization hacker. He was just a solo guy operation who made a huge amount of money before he got caught on hacking. So therefore, the hackers are targeting SMB companies. Around 50% of all cyber attacks are targeted against SMBs. So if you have an SMB out there who are on Windows 7 and are handling customer details, well, firstly, they are breaching GDPR, and secondly, they are posing themselves at a huge threat. We often say that from the point that a company has been hacked, they have around 3 years until they end up in bankruptcy, because a majority of all companies will, unfortunately, when it comes to the SMB segment, end up in bankruptcy within 3 years from the hacker attack has occurred. So make sure that your users are on a secure device, which can only be made if they accelerate refresh towards the modern type of devices that we are talking about today. And the final aspect is, of course, the limited performance. And the limited performance kind of loops back to what I mentioned before with my own computer that I think is a bit too slow on startup. I sometimes have to spend a little bit too much time waiting for different programs to load. And it may seem like a luxurious problem that I have to wait 30 or 40 seconds for my Excel spreadsheets to load. But in reality, that is also a part of the decreased productivity cost. So we are losing time sitting and waiting for systems to update or for different programs to load, when we instead can be focusing on creating value for the company. Devices that are over 5 years old are performing around 2.5 times slower. When it comes to security, I just want to show you this overview. With Windows 10 Pro on a modern device, you get the best type of security possible. If you have a legacy Windows, for example, Windows 8, you only get the type of security features that are marked in blue. If you have Windows 10 Pro on a legacy device, you get the blue and the black security features. And then finally, on Windows 10 Pro on a modern device, you get everything from blue to black to orange in terms of security features. So with this overview, it's quite easy to say with Windows 10 Pro on a modern device, you get the optimal amount of security, making sure that you're protected both pre-breach and post-breach. And here is the slide that actually shows us how the landscape lies today. In Western Europe, we have a SMB PC refresh rate, which is 3.8 years. And even though when we talk about refresh rate, we also acknowledge the fact that we do acknowledge the fact that it's not necessarily so that all companies buy the type of modern devices that we normally promote. We want to see people having the flexible capabilities, and we want to see them having the productiveness of a top of the line device. But a lot of companies may, even though they refresh within 4 years, they may actually end up buying a very, very basic computer that is not as we define it, modern. So we still have a huge potential with 39% in, or 61%, upsell potential to get them to the modern type of devices, because there is a majority of the devices being sold that are not modern. They do not have the type of capabilities that we are discussing here today. One suggestion before we come over to Intel's passage is the fact that if your customer want to refresh, they do see the fact that an old device is costing them, but they're hold back because they are limited in terms of fundings. Refreshing a whole computer, if you're a company of 30 employees perhaps, and everyone needs a new computer, we are talking a very large sum that has to be paid up front. And I would therefore suggest you look into device as a service. Device as a service builds on the fact that you do not own the computer as a company. You instead buy the solution. So you pay as you go for the hardware, for the support, and for the type of services that fits your need. For example, this means that a company, instead of just selling the computer and then calling back and upgrading their office, you instead sell them the whole entity. And by doing so, you package it with one price, and they pay for the period that they need. So they do not have to pay a down payment of 1,500 euros for the device and 200 euros for the productivity software. They instead pay on a monthly basis for everything they need. Um, the benefits as a reseller offering device as a service is, of course, that you could increase your revenue because you tap in to the type of customers that are not ready to upgrade just yet due to the fact that it requires such a big down payment. Instead, you spread the cost over time, and you can sell them more full more full package of solutions. So if they think, for example, that your security offering would make the initial payment too large, well, with device as a service, it is only as a monthly cost and therefore doesn't affect their financial standings as much, making them more interested in actually acquiring those kind of solutions as well. And from a customer perspective, they of course think that it's great that you have a broader service offering, which makes them more happy with you as a provider. And it also enables you to stay relevant in a competitive market, because we are seeing that the market for device as a service is growing. We are counting on the fact that in 4 years' time, 30% of all PCs that will be purchased are via device as a service. And we are calculating on the size of the device as a service market to be in the number of around $71 billion. So we are talking a huge growth and a huge business potential as a reseller. With that being said, the customer benefit is, of course, that they have the predictable pricing, they have the flexibility. It's simplified for them because they buy the whole solution with support, with the productivity tools that they need, with the software and with the hardware. And if they have any problem, it is just as with leasing a car. Instead of you having to be shocked at the repair shop because it cost you 1,000 euros to repair, you instead just pay a monthly fee. And if the car breaks down, well, then it is all covered. You do not have to pay anything extra for that. So it is a great way to make sure that they get the type of foreseeable cost structure for their hardware and software solutions. With that said, the components are basically a modern device, a modern type of billing, which is handled either via your own portal or via Microsoft portal. And then they get the type of modern services they need. And we make sure that we can control and help them accelerate, refresh, and refresh their devices on our premises. So making sure that we don't sell a computer to a company which they then use for 10 years without actually knowing that it would have been more favorable for them to buy a new computer 6 years ago. So making sure that they refresh in a timely fashion, which is the right one for them. With that being said, I just want to loop back to the fact that 77% of Swedish executives are counting on lasting change in remote work. So the landscape is changing. And we, of course, want to hear from our friends at Intel how Intel enables companies to meet these kind of changes when it comes to remote work. And with that said, Harry or Mark, I do not know which one of you wants to start, but
Yeah,
I'm going to hand it over to you.
I will start. Harry here. Hello. Good
Nice.
morning, everyone. I will do this presentation together with Mark Beckers. And my name is Harry Bijesbergen. And I'm member of the Intel VPro business development team. And you could also see transaction focus because I'm seconded to Intel. So I've been member of the VPro business development team since 2019 and responsible for the Benelux and since a couple of months also for the Nordics. Sebastian, please, the next slide. Yes, okay, thank you. Before we will inform you about Intel vPro, I think it is very important to say what means partnering with Intel. What Sebastian told, the DaaS proposition will become more and more important. And from the perspective from Intel, we are looking for device as a service partners, and we can help you to become a device as a service partner. We can help you to develop a device as a service proposition. So what you won't get is competition from us for a customer spend. Yeah, we are not to win to a purchase order for ourselves or to sell directly. And um, we don't like to sell hard products, but we want to talk about with you, yeah, about solving business problems and not about technology for technology's sake. So partnering with Intel, I will inform you later in the presentation what we can do together with you. Next slide, please, Sebastian.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is nearly the same what Sebastian already told you. What we see is that working today is completely different than a couple of years ago. Yeah, what we can see is the traditional way, the traditional work-life balance is the blue line, the thick blue line, and what we now see is the purple line, the new work-life balance. And since COVID, yeah, we see a completely other balance of work-life. Yeah, what we now see is that more and more people are working from home. Yeah, so they don't have to drive to their work, and they don't have at the end of the day drive to their home. It's not anymore an 8 hours work a day. It is spread of the whole day. And what we also see that we are not the only one who are working from home. Yes, all if you have older kids, they have their lessons also online. They are talking with friends online. Um, from a work perspective, we have video conferences, webinars like this. So it is completely different than a couple of years ago, and it will change. Also after COVID-19, we think that will become a hybrid work-life environment. So that means, yeah, that there will more demands on device management. Sebastian, please, next slide. Yes. So more demands on device management. Yeah. But what we see, there will be more remote workers. So there will be more devices and more demand for efficiency. Yeah. What we also see is if we read the Forrester survey, yeah, we asked Forrester to do an investigation to 250 companies. And what we see is that 81% of the IT managers said that security is more and more a key issue. And for the productivity side, they said that 75 of the IT managers that productivity is a key issue. So that has to be solved. And well, we think that we, with our Intel VPro platform, can contribute to solve these problems. And now I would like to ask Mark. Mark, please, to pass over my slide to the next one, and maybe you can start with a short introduction.
Okay, my name is Mark Beckers, and I'm working a little bit more than 20 years for Intel, and I'm focusing as a technical sales specialist on the different kind of technologies which are part of Intel business clients, and then especially on the VPro platform. And if we're talking about the VPro platform, you could see that as I could say a little bit as the hero of the business, of the commercial, the business platforms that Intel is delivering together, working together with the different equipment manufacturers. And for a VPro platform, there are kind of four vectors of value where we are focusing on. And during the presentation, we will touch on all these four factors. So first of all, there is the kind of the performance and the productivity that such a platform delivers. And surely, if you look for like the previous speakers already mentioned, if you're working from home, the workload also changed because much more webinars, collaboration kind of tools, conference calls are added to the workload, and that means that it also kind of changing in the requirements on the performance and the productivity of such a platform. Working from home, it means also that we are working in of the endpoints are more and more connected to your home router and then to the internet. So also that kind of secured environment where such an endpoint was normally in, that's not the case, and that's not the case anymore. So there needs to be a kind of an increased focus on security. How can we better protect devices? How can we detect kind of attacks? And even and when we are getting attacked, how can we and corrupted? How can we recover quickly? Such a device is becoming more and more important. And then the manageability part, the servicing part. How can we keep these kind of PCs, which are most of the time now at home and are not entering anymore the enterprise environment? How can we keep them productive on our wired and wireless networks? How can we keep them also updated and upgraded even if they don't enter our enterprise environment anymore? How can we manage them effectively also for these remote workers is important. And then there was also talking about a PC and you buy a new PC, and now how can I keep it up to date and upgraded? I think it's also important if you buy a PC, looking to the stability and the robustness and how that kind of PC is tested to make sure that it's going to work with the different kind of Windows 10 versions which are regularly released. And then we are talking about the stability of the total PC fleet and of each of these kind of PCs. So with the next slide, please.
Yes.
Let us first talk a little bit about the performance one, and then if we talk about performance and productivity of a PC, I think that normally we think about the performance and about the performance of the CPU, and of course there are kind of minimum performance requirements for the CPU, and the CPU is one of the components who are responsible for the performance. But it's not only the CPU who is performance, and that's one of the things where we're focusing on with the VPro platform. The name platform is well chosen. It's not only it's how do you bring all the kind of different components which are in a platform, which are in a CPU. How can you bring them together so that together they provide a good performance and a good productivity. And then we are not talking only about the CPU. We are only so talking about the integrated graphics and the performance that is delivered there. And for instance, that's something what is clear about which coders are there, and other kind of technologies which are and functionalities which are in the graphic processors, which helps for webinars and which helps for collaboration. But then we are also talking about connectivity, and so for instance, connectivity so that you can provide a lot of external monitors, and that can be done with high-speed kind of connections. And then we are thinking about Thunderbolt, and in the latest platforms, for instance, Thunderbolt 4 to docking stations, to external storage, and to external monitors. And then another part is the Wi-Fi, and in most of the VPro platforms, Wi-Fi 6 is integrated, and that's a new kind of Wi-Fi standard which brings extra bandwidth, which brings extra performance for the connectivity, and also extra security. And Wi-Fi 6 is the latest standards, and I know utilities, public spaces, offices, and also your home routers. Wi-Fi 6 will be rolled out in the future, but with buying PCs which have that Wi-Fi 6 already now integrated, it means that at least your endpoints are already ready to use Wi-Fi 6 when it becomes in the near future more prevalent. And then with Wi-Fi 6 also added security on the connectivity part, and that brings us to the performance, to that second factor of value of a VPro platform, and that's then the security. And so on the next slide, if we are talking to the next slide, please. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
if
sorry.
you're talking about security, no, now we are running too far. My apologies.
No worries.
If you are talking about security, then you're thinking indeed about how can I detect and protect myself against threats, and what can be done on that part. And then it's of course very important, the application and the data protection, and also the identity protection. What is the kind of other kind of things like facial recognition, fingerprint, and things like that to log into PCs instead of using the passwords. And another kind of thing is, unfortunately, maybe sooner or later everybody will be hacked. Is one of the sentences at the moment. Is then, but important then even also if you are hacked, how can I quickly recover? How can I quickly recover back to a kind of a known configuration? And that's where we're also focusing on with the VPro platforms, and that's where we introduce a lot of kind of technologies and functionalities for security. And what we have done is, instead of talking about these kind of securities, we brought them all together under a kind of umbrella name, what we are calling Intel Hardware Shield. And before I start to talk about Intel Hardware Shield, I wanted to mention also that when we are going to talk about the manageability and the remote management capabilities of a VPro platform, and that technology, what's used for that one is called interactive management technology. Also, that kind of technology is going to help for the recovery phase, because it allows you to recover quickly and remotely in cases that one of the systems are breached, I should say. And then the next slide, please. If we talk about Intel Hardware Shield, and a kind of the different kind of technologies that are part of a VPro platform, and are contributing to that Intel Hardware Shield, we categorize these kind of technologies in three groups. And the first kind of technologies is below the OS security. And maybe before we start to talk about that, why do we talk about these kind of technologies, and why is it important? Well, as we already talked about it, the commercial, what we are doing today is working from home. So we adopted another kind of workplace culture, and we are not, these kind of PCs are not anymore in a very secured environment of the organization, inside the perimeter, inside the firewall, but we're working at home, outside of that firewall, in a less kind of secure environment. And that's kind of the reasons why we have to look and why we have to increase our focus on all kind of technologies, because we are realizing that traditional security, which has been software only and operates above the OS, that is not sufficient that is not sufficient anymore. Because what we are seeing today is that ransomware and other kind of malware attacks, they are more and more focusing on hardware, on the BIOS and the firmware, on the firmware level. And also industry security experts anticipate that cyber attacks will exploit the increased use of virtualized environments when we are now working at home. And we also have to look how can we better protect these kind of virtualized environments. And that brings me back to the kind of the three categories. So the first category is below the OS security, and that means how can we make sure that we minimize the attack surface for attacks below the OS? How can we minimize the attack surface for BIOS and firmware? So how can we provide out-of-the-box enhanced protection for firmware-based attacks? And that's where we are working together. For instance, with Microsoft, think on the secured core PCs, and with the different equipment manufacturers, how these kind of technologies can be used. If we then think on Windows 10 and virtualized based security, VBS environments and things like that, then we are thinking about virtualized based kind of security and virtualization kind of technologies who can help to make the OS and the applications running on OS more secure, and also who helps to make these kind of virtualized environments that they can run very performant, so that they have less kind of productivity impact on the user. And that's then also true for the third kind of category. These are kind of technologies which we are calling advanced threat protection, and by telemetry on the CPU level, by GPU offloading, so a kind of algorithms, security algorithms, implementing them using the graphical processor instead, the integrated graphical processor instead of the CPU, so that they have less kind of productivity impact. That are kind of technologies which helps for anti-malware software, which augments their threat detection, their kind of threat detection kind of capabilities, so that with minimizing the productivity impact for users, so that they can better kind of detect these kind of threats, malware and ransomware and crypto mining hackings, what is happening today. And then let us change let us transform to the next slide and to the next vector of value, and that's the kind of the modern manageability focus. And I already mentioned about the interactive management technology. So Intel VPro platform, one of the values, is the remote management capability and the out-of-band remote management capability, and that's provided by the technology called interactive management technology. And Intel provides also a tool which is called Intel Endpoint Management Assistant, and which you can free download from our website. And that's a tool who allows to activate and to configure AMT so that you can make use of it. And that means you can use of these management kind of capabilities inside your firewall, but also outside your firewall, even independently if that PC is now connected via the wired Ethernet, but also if you are working from home and you're connected via wireless home to the internet. And even not only if that OS is up and running, and that's why we call it out of band, if that OS is not up and running, when the PC crashed or when the PC is powered down, even in these kind of cases, you can use this kind of technology to connect to that PC and to see what's happening. And that brings us with the next slide to the kind of different kind of use cases which you can do with this kind of technology. So like I said, you can remote power control. For instance, think about a kind of use cases if you have a number of endpoints which are inside your environment. Well, when they overnight, when they are powered down, you can use that. You can use this kind of capability to power them up as a start of an update and an upgrade process that you do on a regular kind of basis. You have the hardware KVM kind of capability, what allows you to keyboard, video, and mouse, so you can completely control remotely a remotely PC, and that you can do that if that PC is up and running, or what is normal. But you can also do that when the OS is not present. So you can, for instance, remotely going to the BIOS screen and changes the BIOS configuration if should that if that should be possible. And you can use the hardware KVM together with the remote kind of access kind of capabilities, so that you can recover faulty systems without sending a technician. If that PC is crashed, even if you can connect to it, you can take it completely over with the KVM kind of capabilities, and with these remote access kind of capabilities. And with the third kind of use case, you could then, for instance, boot it in temporary environments. You can change the boot order and say that that a network boot or a PXE boot is needed, or that you're going to boot with another kind of image, and that allows you, for instance, maybe to upgrade from one Windows 10 version to another, or to look to see and to repair the normal kind of standard image. These are kind of use cases which are provided by interactive management technology, using together with Intel endpoint management assistance, and is a kind of cloud-based modern manageability kind of use cases. And then on the next slide, that brings us to the fourth part, to the fourth vector of value, and that's the stability and the robustness. And that's where the stable IT platform programs comes in. That's kind of a program with a rigorous testing and validation program to make sure that the components that go into a PC work well together, and that they're going to be that reliable. And that's kind of also a predictable cadence that IT departments can plan around. And it contains also a Windows 10 validation program to ensure that components and drivers that are part of an Intel VPro platform are compatible with the latest versions of Windows 10. And as I mentioned, if you look to a Windows VPro platform, that's not only the CPU, that's the graphics, that's also the integrated graphics, that's also the Wi-Fi, that's also the Thunderbolt, that's also maybe a kind of storage solutions which are part. All these kind of hardware, all these kind of drivers, they are rigorously tested and validated by Intel, and that gives you kind of a very robust and stable platform, what surely helps in keeping such a platform operational with a minimal cost. And the next slide. Also, if you next to the VPro platform on the consumer space, we started with another kind of branding, and what's called the Evo branding. And the Evo branding that focuses on kind of what is very important for an end user, and very important for an end user is the form factor, thinner light laptops, responsiveness, battery life, opening the lid and able to start to work immediately, fast charging, and a very best-in-class connectivity, for instance, with Intel Wi-Fi 6 and Thunderbolt 4. And we thought what is important for a normal on a consumer platform that's also important for an end user on a commercial on a business platform, and that's then the next slide. So we brought also the VPro branding together with the Evo branding, and that's then an Evo VPro platform. And with a VPro platform, as I already mentioned, we focused on things which are important for IT administrators: security, manageability, reliability, and stability, and the performance. And with an Evo, we are focusing on what is important for an end user: responsiveness, battery life, instant wake, kind of the thinner light form factors. And so we brought them together. And so you have from different kind of equipment manufacturers now VPro platforms. We also have that Evo branding. So we're focused on IT and focus on the end user are coming together. That's all what I wanted to tell, and then I give the word back to Harry And you can change to the next slide, I believe,
Yeah.
Sebastian.
Thank you, Mark. Well, thank you. Yes, well, we're nearly at the end of this webinar. What I said earlier, we are looking for partners, partners with a focus on managed services and the device as a service. But you can see here in the slide, yeah, we are looking for several type of partners. But from the client computing group, we are looking for partners with a focus on managed services and device as a services. And what I said, we can help you with develop that kind of propositions. And well, why become a specialist? Why become an Intel partner? Because well, there are some incremental benefits, like for example, market development funds. Here in the Netherlands, I doing some lead generation campaigns together with resellers and together with the OEMers. So together with Dell, HP, Lenovo, Fujitsu, and the reseller, and that results in extra business and extra leads. Um, Sebastian, could you please put on the next slide?
Of course.
Okay. Because what you can see there is that we have a focus this year on looking to DaaS partners and managed services partners is a focus from Intel in the year 2021. So if you think after this webinar, well, I'm interested in partnering with Intel, I would like to know more about partnering with Intel, please send an email to harry@transactionfocus.com and I will contact you, and then we can discuss this further on an face-to-face basis via Teams, for example. Well, I think this is my last slide. Thank you very much, and I will give the word back to Sebastian.
And thank you both for attending. It has been a pleasure listening about Intel's approach to it, because as we all know, it is an ecosystem, and nothing goes without the other. So I'm really happy that we could join forces here today, and I look forward to doing it again in the future. With that being said, I just want to loop back to Intel Evo vPro, because Mark, you did a great presentation on it, and for me, I just want to stretch the message, because the fact is that Intel Evo vPro, for me, it's the perfect combination. When I first heard about it, I just told my boss that let's look online what Intel Evo vPro computers we have and order one for me. Unfortunately, didn't happen yet, but I'm fingers crossed it will, because the fact is that if you have the type of user that has a high demanding workload, but also wants a better looking device, a more easy to bring device, perhaps it's an architect. They do have demanding software, but when they come to a meeting and they want to present their prospect on a really advanced design house, how would it look if they put up a 3 kilo stone on the table and open up the screen, which is not even high resolution? Well, that architect should definitely buy an Intel Evo vPro device from you, the resellers, because it is an excellent device which looks amazing. So with that said, I am, of course, stretching my biggest thanks to Intel and for all of you attending here live and also attending online or a view on demand afterwards. You can always reach out to me or to Magnus at Also or Harry at Intel if you have any inquiries. We are here to help, and we are happy to help. The final thing that I want to mention is Expert Zone. And for those of you who have joined earlier, you may have heard about this little thing that we're doing with the Start Kit. If you go to expertzone.microsoft.com, do a module, take a screenshot, and send it to my email, v-sebastianl@microsoft.com. I will then either you remember this URL code, or I will just get back to you with the forms where you register your shipping details so that I can send you an Expert Zone Start Kit, because we want people to gain the kind of knowledge to win the commercial landscape, and that is best done via expert zone, because on expert zone we collect all of the kind of information that is applicable for a commercial reseller in the Nordics. So you don't have to worry about the information not being applicable for your market or not being relevant for a commercial user. It is all designated for our resellers on the commercial side of business. So go to Expert Zone and get that start kit. With that being said, thanks a lot for joining in today. I would be happy, even if you're viewing this on demand, scan this QR code and give us some feedback. Tell us what's been good, what can be improved, because we, as everyone in our landscape, is striving to improve. And nothing can't be even better. So thank you for attending and thank you for tuning in. I wish you all a great Thursday or whichever weekday that it is when you are watching this. Thanks and have a great rest of the week.